This video is brought to you by Squarespace. It takes a village to make a musical. Script writing, musical composition, and set design all play important roles, but nothing immerses audiences more than some good costumes. From witches in Oz to flappers in New York City, musical theater costumes are rarely cut from the same cloth. They help us learn more about the characters on stage, drop us in the middle of historical moments, and even transport us to different worlds. I'm Brendan with Wait in the Wings, and these are 6 of the most iconic costumes in musical history. But of course, before we dive in, I have to take a contractually obligated 30 seconds to tell you about Squarespace. Building your dream website has never been easier, thanks to Squarespace's state-of-the-art design tools and beautiful templates. Even better, their business tools mean you can manage email, appointments, and sales all in one spot. So head to squarespace.com/waitinthewings and use code WAITINTHEWINGS to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. What do the wives of Henry VIII and the Spice Girls have in common, besides a distant Doctor Who connection? When it came to bringing the story of Henry VIII's wives to life in the musical concert extravaganza 6, no designer was more qualified than Gabriella Slade. Slade was no newbie to theater, having created the costumes for the UK staging of In the Heights. In 2019, she also designed the costumes for the Spice Girls World Tour. Working closely with the writers of 6, Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, Slade dove deep into analyzing each queen individually. Similar to how each of the Spice Girls repped their own unique personalities, so did each of the queens. Compared to the show's humble beginnings performing in street clothes at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Slade's bejeweled costumes made the whole place shimmer. Catherine of Aragon pulled from Beyoncé, with an ornate headpiece to match. Jane Seymour took cues from Adele. Each of the costumes also claimed a signature color, from Anne Boleyn's green sleeves to Catherine Howard's bubblegum pop pink. Each her heart out Olivia Rodrigo purple. In an interview with Playbill, Slade shared that this helped keep it very individualized. But by using the same materials and trim across the whole of the design, they read as a pop group. In addition to the colors, each costume included 3-dimensional black crisscross patterns and grids that mimicked the stained glass windows of 16th century architecture. If you look at all 6 together, each costume looks like a smaller section of stained glass that comes together to form an even bigger window. To create those iconic silhouettes, Slade once again turned to history, this time by looking at Tudor-era portraits. Over-the-top shoulders, exaggerated hips, and rivets essentially come from the pages of 1500s Vogue. But if you thought designing costumes for 6 pop queens was tough, imagine doing it for 1 ice queen. When Disney announced a musical adaptation of their hit movie Frozen, costume designer Christopher Oram was faced with a massive challenge: translating the characters of the highest-grossing animated movie of all time into living, breathing ones on stage. As Orm explained to Time Out, the costumes from the film are iconic, and so I approached the reimagining of them with trepidation and respect. Staying true to the film, Oram wove chilling shades of blues, greens, and golds into the costumes as a nod to the fantasy land of Arendelle. Additionally, many of the costumes boasted embroidery inspired by traditional Norwegian designs, a level of detail and specificity difficult to achieve through computer animation. In all, Oram designed roughly 300 costumes, but none of them sent chills quite like the dress Elsa revealed once she let it go. In the first half of the show, Oram bundled the Ice Queen in a deep emerald dress with long sleeves and a high turtleneck. Topped off with a long violet cape, pounds of fabric weighed the outfit down, a distinct choice that spoke to Elsa's somber life and struggles. Fast forward to her show-stopping Let It Go number. Once she announced the past was in the past, so was her old dress. Hidden from the audience, someone pulled the dress back to reveal one kick-ice costume. Using Orum's design, every Ice Queen dress for the Let It Go number was handcrafted for the actress by Eric Winterling Inc., the costume shop responsible for outfitting Mrs. Maisel, the Witches of Wicked, and Bad Cinderella. According to the 2021 Showstoppers costume exhibit, the fabric was stitched with a menagerie of 44,000 stones, sequins, and Swarovski crystals. A task that takes well over 400 hours of work per dress. But as the storm raged on at the St. James Theater, paper faces went on parade right across the street at the Majestic. You can't talk about iconic musical costumes without mentioning the Phantom of the Opera. From the half mask to the Red Death, Maria Bjornsson's costume design for the show is packed with legendary looks, especially during the musical's spectacular masquerade ball. According to Playbill, over 50 to 60 costumes appeared just in this one scene, depending on the production. While designing the show, Bjornsson took inspiration from 1870s and 1880s art based on the true Paris Opera House. Specifically, she focused in on art showing ballet dancers, singers, and partygoers. Each costume in the masquerade had a specific identity, name, and lore, all of which fans painstakingly cataloged on Tumblr. Some, like the butterfly, matched up to real-life opera costumes of the past. Materials and fabrics were meticulously layered to create unique textures, patterns, and details, with entire pages of Bjornsson's costume notes dedicated just to the masquerade scene's tights. Though the masquerade ballroom appeared crowded in the promotional videos and photographs, not everyone joined in on the dancing. In the Broadway production, the cast danced on the steps alongside 19 dressed mannequins, all of which wore costumes designed by Bjornsson. Even though the costumes didn't move, they somehow still take a good amount of wear and tear. As Phantom topped legendary status as the longest running show in Broadway history, some of the costumes actually outlived the original costume shops. This left many new costume shops to pick up the torch and continue the legacy of making and repairing the costumes. That being said, the costumes in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom didn't undergo nearly as much wear and tear as they did in his musical, loosely based on Thomas the Tank Engine. When Lloyd Webber told his collaborator and the king of the mega musical design, John Napier, the idea for his next show in 1984, his reaction was the same one anyone would have had. Just 3 years after turning humans into cats, Napier now needed to somehow turn them into trains. The team originally considered having the cast race around on skateboards, but they abandoned the plan because seeing people's feet hit the ground would ruin the illusion of one fluid machine. But then, costume and set designer John Napier was nearly knocked off his feet when a group of roller skaters whizzed past him in Central Park. Just like that, Starlight Express's visual journey picked up speed. Napier crafted dozens of these industrial-inspired costumes, all of them nodded to the character's specific train type. For Dinah the dining car, the shoulder pads resembled napkin dispensers. Greaseball the diesel train looked like a 1950s greaser. Electra, the futuristic electric train, rocked an intense mohawk attached to a silver helmet. 40 years since its first appearance, the mohawk has only gotten bigger in productions around the world, from Japan to Australia to Las Vegas, as the costumes continue to evolve, but still give strong nods to Napier's original designs. In June 2024, Starlight took to the rink once again in London, this time with a new costume designer in the conductor's seat, one who is no stranger to structured metallic costumes. Gabriella Slade, the costume designer for Six. Even though the premise of the show was loosely inspired by Thomas the Tank Engine, the costume designs for the show bared little resemblance to the children's book. However, the same couldn't be said for Catherine Zuber's approach with Dr. Seuss. When it came to costuming Seussical, the show went through as many creative iterations as there are Who's in Whoville. The show's original costume designer, Catherine Zuber, went all in, creating well over 200 over-the-top cartoonish designs. For example, Horton the elephant wore ears and a tail, which seems simple enough. But when the writer, Lynn Ahrens, saw the costumes, she cried in the back of the theater, saying, "Oh no, it's a children's musical." Zuber's designs came in direct conflict with the producers behind the show, who were pushing for a dangerous, erotic, and edgy look, rebranding Seuss as a show for everyone, specifically adults. Zuber made it clear that her costume designs weren't set in stone, and she was open to making changes. But just as she prepared to make adjustments, the producers fired her 2 days into tech rehearsals, citing creative differences. Soon enough, the costumes went from overly cartoonish to instead being based in reality. Horton now wore pants and a short sleeve button-up. Maisie the Bird wore a blue dress, and the Cat in the Hat wore a Dr. Seuss-esque tuxedo. Eventually, down the road, the dark, edgy, and sexy Seussical was also replaced, once again, by a simplified version of the show that spoke to the heart of Dr. Seuss's work, bringing back the childlike characteristics and imagination-fueling world at the very heart of the author's work. Less was more. That being said, Zuber's colorful style might not have worked for the Seussical team, but put that style in a Parisian nightclub and you've got a whole nother story. Elvis, The Great Gatsby, Romeo and Juliet. If filmmaker Baz Luhrmann's name is on it, you can guarantee a grand spectacle is in store. When the musical adaptation of his movie Moulin Rouge took to the stage at the Al Hirschfeld Theater in 2019, every outfit was an opportunity to transport the audience to a lavish, material world. To craft the show's iconic looks, Catherine Zuber researched how showgirl fashion evolved over the years. She particularly drew inspiration from the Belle Epoque era in Paris, when the real-life Moulin Rouge peaked. Zuber spent 7 months sketching out nearly 300 costumes, with gowns and gloves encrusted in, you guessed it, Swarovski crystals, suit coats drenched in shimmering patterns, and multi-layer skirts billowing with frills and ruffles. When it came to making Satine, the show's lead, Sparkle, the designer started with a red evening gown. But as the scene transformed to revolve around the idea of the diamond, so did the costume concept. The bottom of the dress turned sheer. Then, the bottom of the dress got erased completely, making way for a dazzling feather tail. Finally, crystal sparkling boots, gloves, and a hat made it clear. Diamonds were Zuber's best friend. She packed each scene with passion, glamour, sensuality, and sometimes surprise, which in Satine's case meant 12 costume changes and 5 quick changes. It was clear in early conversations with director Alex Timbers that the costumes should take inspiration from the original movie, but not copy them directly. From Moulin Rouge to Beetlejuice, Alex Timbers has turned adaptation into an art form. But how? Well, click on this video to learn more about how the director turns classic movies into hit musicals, and support the channel on Patreon to help us continue making these videos.